The Clockwork Toymaker by Ben Tales. There is a certain poetic beauty, a special naive tragedy to be found in the medium of fairy tale. It is a treasured form, and one which I both cherish and enjoy. It is with this in mind that I sit to write this story, and it is without cynicism or irony that I pen these starting words. Once upon a time, among the ancient arches and whispering canals, lost somewhere among the self-conscious stonework and aging abbeys, the rambling twists and turns of the town of B, there lived a toymaker of such skill and renown that people traveled from the furthest corners of the world to see the creations that the word mouth could only describe as indescribable. None had ever met the toymaker, but it was said that the toys themselves, miracles of clockwork and common lace, communicated to all who saw them a life of their own. They were magical machines, and the toymaker had long been proclaimed a genius. Like so many geniuses, however, the toymaker was given to certain whimsical flights of fancy. Barring extreme inclusiveness, the most particular of these was an unwillingness to exhibit more than one toy at a time. Ritualistically, it seemed at every summer's end, a new toy was unveiled and paraded through the streets of town. Past the shopfront facades, and against the lyric tones of the evening revelry, each year saw the arrival of ever more enchanting creations. Basic ragdolls replaced by power skews, and then magnificent clockwork ballerinas. The subject of the toymaker's endeavors were always perfect studies in female form, perfect from the first ever model, and yet somehow ever more beguiling with each passing year. As for the old models, they were put away, never to be seen again by the human eye. There was many a traveler who made an annual pilgrimage to B, simply to see what the toymaker had built, to gaze upon the newest creations, and to wonder enigmatically about the disappearance of the old. With respect for what they saw, they were never disappointed. Understandably, however, visitors often grew covetous of the dolls, longing to have them for themselves. The perfect forms built, they believed, purely for their own pleasures. They felt it unfair that the toymaker should discard the old models, which they vowed could bring them perfect joy forever. As none had ever seen the toymaker, none had ever been able to ask what became of the older dolls, and assumed that they were kept locked up in the toymaker's workshop. A crime, they believed, for they did not see why the joy could not be shared, or could not be purchased. Time passed, and then one particular summer, during the magical month of June, a traveler came to town. A traveler from the lost corner of the world, where tale the toymaker had not yet spread. While walking the winding streets of the old town, headed with no certainty towards the abbey and its mist, the traveler spied the toymaker's latest doll, a pure-faced, white-laced dancer, who spun with grace and imperium on a gold pedestal. With no forewarning of the creature's clockwork nature, the traveler took the doll for a forlorn and lovely maiden. He projected upon her solemn gaze a long and tragic history, and wondered, perhaps, if she needed saving. Catching, he believed, a glimmer of recognition in her eyes. He approached her and set himself to conversation.
Hello there. My name's Sterling. What's yours?
The doll gave no reply. At first the traveler was saddened by this, and felt a pang of rejection. But as he looked closer, he realized he made a mistake. Whom he had taken for a maiden he saw as a man-made creation. He apologized to the doll for his error, and continued his slow-paced wandering. As he turned to go, however, the doll let out a cough. He turned back and saw that the doll was smiling. The traveler was stunned. But then the doll began to speak.
"Hello,"
the doll said.
"Don't be alarmed."
"Oh,"
said the traveler.
"I'm sorry. At first I took you for a maiden, for alone and in need of saving. But then, when you did not respond, I took you for a doll.
Indeed, I am a doll.
The doll replied.
Although I am, in point of fact, also a maiden.
The traveler was confused and looked squarely forward in puzzlement. The doll continued.
And what is more,
She said,
I am also a toymaker. Of some repute, I might add. This is an example of my work.
She gestured at herself, and then she smiled. The traveler was frozen by this statement, for he had never met a talking maiden doll before, least of all one who was a toymaker and, he gathered, her own creation at that. He marshaled himself and finally found some words to speak.
I'm sorry, but I'm a little confused.
He said.
Answer me this, please. If you are a doll, but also in fact a maiden, you are a creature to be coveted and a creature to be saved, and yet, as a toymaker, you seem to be the master of your own destiny. If you are indeed all these things, my question is, do you in fact need saving?
The doll-maiden toymaker raised an eyebrow and, looking the traveler squarely in the eye, she smiled, and she said nothing.